what are the steps to not only repair that abandonment of self, but to also empower you to start keeping a promise to yourself?
So I think what I'd say there is we want to get curious about a part of ourselves that clearly is kind of taking over the driver's seat. So right now, if you're saying, I really do want to get up and take a walk in the morning. And I think this is an important step. Say, is that really put from a place of shame and guilt or from a place of living in alignment with my values? If it's from shame and guilt, oh, I'm a horrible, lazy person. Yeah, no one ever motivates from that place. So I think we have to ask ourselves that question. If it's like, no, like I just know it makes me feel better. Like it really does. And yet I don't do it. Okay, that's a good start. Then I think the next step is there's some part of me that activates in the morning and sends me some message that stops me from getting out of bed. And it's okay if I don't know what that voice is, but I'm just going to start listening for it and being curious. And right now, if everyone even imagines this part, a key to behavior change is realizing that we have feelings or thoughts that are a part of us and not all of us. And they only become a problem when they take over all of us. So maybe it's even as simple as like, yeah, I wake up and there's a part of me that's like, oh, I'm so tired. I can't do this.
Were you in bed with me this morning?
I was. Right. So there's this part.
Yeah.
And then what's really key is we often think we have to shut down that part or shoo it away. Going back to aloneness is always the problem. That part's just looking for a magnet. Once a part of us or a feeling has a magnet and a partner, it actually is no longer as powerful. It gets cushioned. So it's the difference between saying, I know I'm tired, but other people do this and you're so lazy. No. Versus, hi, tired part. Literally saying hi to it. Hi, tired part. You always activate first in the morning. Here's the thing. I know you're real and you're tired and you're a part of me. Not all of me. And I know there's also another part somewhere in there. She's just quieter right now. Saying, I can do hard things. I can do hard things. And even if I don't kind of activate her now, maybe tomorrow morning she'll get a little bit louder just because she hears me saying, even though I can't hear you, I know you're there. And there's something about telling ourselves when we're struggling. That part is real, right? That's why we say hi to it. So we're validating its existence, but then reminding it it's a part of us and not all of us. This is going to sound so cheesy. My 5-year-old does this at night when he's worried. We've taught him.
I don't think it sounds cheesy at all.
He talks to he calls it his worry boy about the things he's worried. Hi, worry boy. You always get loud at night and you tell me the things I'm worried about and you're a part of me. I'm going to cry. And he goes, not all of me. And I also have, I'm safe boy and I have happy memories boy. And I'm just going to listen to him a little bit right now. And I always think for my son, like, I feel like that's going to make him, like, quote, succeed in the real ways in life more than anything he learns in school. Like, it's incredible. I'm like, wow, he's wired that at age 5. Like, I'm working on that now. So that language, and we can walk through it a little bit. Start by greeting it. Say hi to it. And there's, like, a humor I like to have. You know, like, oh, I could have predicted you would pop up. There you are again. It's always the first thing. Okay, like you're kind of a broken, because those voices, they are kind of broken records. Like they're boring. It's
right,
like,
and then they're heavy. And
yeah, there's the heaviness. Okay, you know what you're going to do now? Now you're going to convince me I can just start tomorrow. Oh, yep, that's what happened. Yep, I got it. Okay, hi, I hear you. And this is IFS language part of this too. There's something to saying to those parts. I hear you, and I'm just going to ask you to step back. And just to make a little space for a part of me that can activate even when I'm tired. And it's so respectful. And it's so empowering. And it puts you back in the driver's seat with these different parts instead of having a part that takes over.
It's so loving.
It's so loving.
Today, we are going to get right into it. We're going to talk about imposter syndrome. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because our daughter, Kendall, who is 23 years old, just had a situation this weekend that triggered imposter syndrome. And I thought, why don't we unpack this moment where your imposter syndrome got triggered? And then more importantly, the incredible things that you shared with me that helped you turn it around. So, ladies and gentlemen, everybody who's listening, Kendall Robbins.
Hey, everybody.
All right, so tell us what happened.
Okay, so this past weekend, I had my first experience as an artist in the real artist world is what I'm going to call it.
What does artist mean?
I am pursuing a career as a professional recording and touring artist, and I'm a singer-songwriter. I've started to write my own music. I'm moving out to LA in a few weeks' time, and this past weekend was my first experience surrounded by people that are really successful artists that are doing the thing that I want to do. And as somebody that's been in school for the past 4 years, I've had very few experiences like this. And so this past weekend was my first few days fully existing in that world without the label of a student on my back. I didn't have that sort of shadow to hide in anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I was feeling embarrassed. I was feeling awkward. I was feeling like an imposter, like I don't belong because I don't have music out and I don't have fans and I don't have a social media following, but I was just me.
Okay, well, let's just back the truck up a minute. So let's just set the table. First of all, every human being struggles with moments of imposter syndrome. I'm looking at the research right here, everybody. I've got my research. Psychologists call this fear of being found out imposter syndrome. It was coined in the 1970s by two female researchers. In fact, Harvard Business Review, Kendall, says that executives worldwide agree that their number one fear is being found to be incompetent.
Oh, okay.
So this is a very normal thing for everybody to experience, and it is what is called intellectual self-doubt, where you enter a situation or you enter a room or you think about doing something, and in your own mind, you start doubting yourself. You start doubting whether or not you're able to do something. You start doubting whether or not you deserve to be in a certain place. And you start feeling worried that people are going to find out that you have no idea what you're talking about. And one thing that I will say from the get-go is the reason why I wanted to have you on is because the situation that you found yourself in on Friday morning just a few days ago is not only so relatable, but I was pretty impressed by how you coached yourself through it and turned it around and had one of the coolest, most affirming weekends of your life. And I know that you have a lot of value to share. So with that, are you willing to go there?
Yes, I am willing.
Okay, great. So just put us at the scene. What was happening Friday morning?
So this past weekend, I was lucky enough to go to a music festival, and I had an artist pass, which means that I got to watch all of the musicians and artists that were performing at the festival perform from backstage in this separate area that the people with the artist pass can hang out in. And I didn't really know what that meant until I got there.
And so what did you think it meant?
I honestly had no idea what artist pass meant. I was just like, sweet, okay. I get to cut the line. That's really awesome. I feel really grateful. And then I walk backstage and I'm surrounded by all of these like very established musicians and artists and performers and people that I've been listening to for the past however many years.
What was that like?
I mean, it was really scary at first because I had no idea that I was going to be within arm's reach of all these people that I've looked up to for the past few years. And being there as somebody that has just gotten out of school, does not have anything released, is just in the woods right now, figuring out who I want to be, what I want to write, what I want to release. I basically don't exist right now in the world that I'm stepping into. And so stepping into this festival as somebody that doesn't really exist online or in this industry yet, but stepping into it physically and being surrounded by all these people was just incredibly daunting. And I felt really scared and awkward and I stood alone a lot of the time.
So can you put us at the moment when you arrive at the festival, you get this pass that is a special thing around your wrist that gives you all access to go anywhere, and you walk into almost like the tent that serves as the green room.
Okay. So I have a family friend that works at this festival and has been going to this festival for a while. So he was the one that was actually able to get me the artist pass. I had honestly no idea what it really meant. I knew that there were some VIP features of this pass, but I did not know what my days were going to look like. I didn't know what the schedule was like. And so basically we get to the festival, we cut the line, we go to this special tent where I get this wristband, and then we walk into the festival. Immediately we're in this crowd. I'm seeing all the food tents, smelling all the smells, seeing all the people. And then we go behind the stage into this roped off section. Meanwhile, the family friend that I am with is sort of showing me the ropes, but of course he's very busy and has things to be doing at the festival. We go behind this rope, and there's this hangout area in the roped off section under a tent. And he said, this is sort of the hangout spot. Okay, I gotta go now.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. So I'm 30 minutes in, I'm wearing a long skirt, and it's 85 degrees outside, which automatically I'm a rookie. And he says, okay, this is sort of the hangout spot. This is sort of our touch point. We can meet here. There's not a lot of service at the festival. So if
in terms of cell service.
Cell service. There's no service at the festival. So if you need to find me, we'll just meet at this tent. I'm like, okay, sweet. I walk into the tent. I'm like, okay, free food, free drinks. This pass is freaking awesome.
Right.
And then I start to recognize the people standing under the tent. I mean, not every single person, but there were some very established artists, and I start to recognize a lot of artists whose music I have been listening to for years now, whose name I have seen on the lineup for the festival, who are now standing in front of me in the free food line. And so I'm thinking, oh my God, okay, this tent is where all the artists and performers hang out. And because I have this pass that says artist pass, I am also allowed to be in this tent. So I'm putting the pieces together slowly. And I'm just like, why am I here? I should not be here. I should be out in that audience with people. I'm not performing. I'm not part of a band. I'm here on a family connection. I just feel like, why am I here? This is so awkward. Not to mention I'm alone. So you can imagine that the imposter syndrome was even grander than if you're with somebody that you can bond with it over. But
did you go up to anybody?
No. So basically, I walk into this tent and I see all these people that I've been following, and I put the pieces together and realize, oh my God, this artist pass on my wrist that says artist means that I have access to everything the performers do, which immediately makes me want to rip the thing off my arm and go stand in the audience, because I'm not performing. I'm not on the industry side. I'm not a musician. I'm not a musician performing with anyone. I'm just here as Kendall. And like I said before, doesn't really exist in this industry world yet.
What do you mean by that? You don't exist?
I don't have anything out to. I feel imposter syndrome talking about the fact that I don't have music out yet on Spotify. I hate talking about it. It makes me want to throw up everywhere. It makes me so embarrassed.
Why?
Because everybody else seems to have it figured out and have shit going on. I know that when I am not in an anxious state of mind, I remind myself, I'm on my own timeline. I don't really want you to include that.
No, but I think that's important because it ties into what I was going to share with you. Please say that.
Okay. I feel very embarrassed to share with my mom's millions and millions and millions of followers and listeners that I don't have anything out on any streaming platform yet. I don't have a social media presence. I don't have fans. I don't have anything. And I'm talking about being an imposter on this podcast when I've never been on tour. I don't have an album out. I don't have followers. I don't have fans. I feel like an imposter for being an imposter. I have imposter syndrome about doing this episode because I feel like I haven't been an imposter for long enough to talk about being an imposter.
What does that even mean?
This is just such a classic example of the syndrome, which is I feel as though I haven't, this feeling is so new to me that it feels like I don't even have enough qualification to talk about it.
Oh, so
do you know what I mean?
You don't feel like you're an authority on how to deal with imposter syndrome because you
I feel like
with it.
I don't feel like I had my first real experience this past weekend dealing with imposter syndrome, and I definitely learned from it. I definitely gained a lot of insight from the experience, but it was my first experience and I feel unqualified to talk about it because it was my first experience.
You're not really selling the episode.
I'm trying to make a joke. I do feel like an imposter right now Because I feel like all of the other people in my industry have experienced this so much more than I have. And now I'm getting on here and getting on my soapbox and trying to tell everybody what it's
You're not getting on your
like.
soapbox. But this is why this conversation is so important. You're in it.
Yeah.
Everybody listening feels like an imposter in some area of their life. Everybody can relate to that feeling like, here I am physically next to the people who are doing what I want to do. And it's so close, I can reach out and touch it. These people I've admired, I've streamed, I've watched them at award shows. They're standing right there. They're doing what I want to do. And the only thing that's keeping me from doing what I want to do is this feeling of not being ready, or this feeling that I'm not going to have what it takes, this feeling of being a nobody, this feeling like somebody's already done it, this feeling like, is there room for me? And because you're in it, you are in a much better place to validate where everybody is, Ken. Like, somebody's already figured this shit out, coming in and being like, well, when you feel like an imposter, do this, this, and this. Yeah. It's easy when you're through it. Mm-hmm. You're right up against it right now. That tension that you feel is important. I remember, God, this must have been like 9 years ago, when I first got into the speaking business, Ken. I hadn't been paid to give a speech, and I get invited, as I'm just starting out, to go to this event in California and speak on a panel. I don't even know what the hell I was speaking about. All I know is there was this opening reception, okay? Sort of like what you're describing, an opening reception for the people who had been invited to speak at this thing. And so, like you, I walk into this room. I have the lanyard around my neck. You've got the little artist thing around your wrist. And I walk in and I am like, oh my God, there's Christy Turlington, the supermodel. Oh my gosh, there's Gretchen Rubin, the author. Oh my gosh, there's this person, there's that person there. And I see all these famous people, all of whom are speaking. I felt like I had no business being there.
Yeah, same.
And all these people were talking and they all seemed to know each other. And there were a couple instances where I'm like, okay, here we go. And I would walk up to a group of people and I'd introduce myself and they'd all turn, oh, what do you do? And I didn't even know how to answer it because I didn't have a book. I had given one TEDx talk and nobody had heard of it yet. I didn't have anything. I felt like I had nothing. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know why I was there. Yeah. And after I would introduce myself and people were like, oh, did you write a book? And I'm like, no, I'm just kind of speaking about motivation. Oh, okay. And then they'd turn. And something flipped in me because I felt like such a fraud being there, but something deeper was going on. And this is what was going on. I realized in that moment that I wanted to do something that mattered. I wanted to do the work or write a book or do something that when I walked into a room, it was like, oh, you're the woman who wrote the 5-second rule? I freaking love that thing. And that like discomfort that I felt in that moment, it sucked in the moment. I went back to my hotel room. I didn't go to the dinner. I cried. I stayed up all night. What am I going to do? But there was something deep inside of me that was like, you don't want to feel this way. You have something that you want to contribute. And feeling like you're on the outside of something that you want to be a part of is a normal experience. See, I think imposter syndrome, that discomfort that you were feeling that first few hours at the artist tent at this music festival, I think that is your dreams going, we got work to do. Oh shit. Like you want to be in here? You want to be doing this? You got stuff to contribute? You got to wake up. Like you got to start putting yourself out there. Like this is a step on the path that's so important because you only feel imposter syndrome in situations that you care about. Because you care about whether or not you've got something to show for what you're doing.
Well, like I said, I was alone and all of these very established, famous artists are walking by me. And it's not like I can be introducing myself to people and saying, oh, go check me out on Spotify, go check me out on Instagram. It's like, hi, I'm Kendall. And then and then I disappear. To the point where someone literally came up to me and was like, are you okay? Like, definitely knew. I looked like I was not supposed to be there. That's how, like, the imposter syndrome had basically creeped onto my face. I was so uncomfortable and so just, like, embarrassed and just felt like, why am I here? I need to leave. I don't want to be here. I want to go home. I don't want to tell people I'm an artist. I don't feel like that at all right now. I don't feel like anyone's going to give a shit about me, including myself. Like, but yeah, it was horrible. It was really horrible. But I mean,
what changed though? Because this is where I want to go to. We can well, hold that thought. I want to hear a quick word from our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to go right to the moment where you flip the switch, because you did. And you made it one of the best weekends of your life. And you made incredible friendships. And you came home a different person after those 3 days. And we're going to talk about what changed when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Mel Robbins, and I'm sitting here with our daughter, Kendall, who's 23, and she is pursuing her dream and goal of being a touring singer-songwriter. And we're talking about imposter syndrome. And so, Ken, I want to go back to the moment where you've been standing in the artist tent at this music festival for the first 5 hours on day one. Somebody has come up to you and said, are you okay? Because you look so out of place and you're alone drinking a White Claw, surrounded by all these touring musicians that you admire. What did you do to turn this around? Because you turned it around, dude.
Well, it definitely was not immediate. It continued for about a few more hours. So
tell me about it. Yeah.
In that tent, oh God. And I'm slightly tipsy now because I've had 2 White Claws alone. And I'm sitting alone. Let me just tell you, every single person in that tent was with another person, if not 3 or 4. So you can tell that I probably look so weird sitting alone. And I was just kind of thinking, you know, I'm here. I get to be around some of my biggest inspirations. I get to go backstage and be an arm's length from them while they absolutely murder it on stage. I get free food. I get free White Claws. Why the fuck wouldn't I enjoy this? You know, like, I'm just going to enjoy this because no, I'm not performing, although I wish that I was. No, I don't have a Grammy, although that is a dream of mine. No, I don't have music out on Spotify that I can tell my favorite artists that are here to listen to. No, I can't do any of that. But you know what? I can be grateful that I'm here. And I can lean into that gratitude and just have fun. So once I exhaled and I was like, okay, I'm going to enjoy myself. This has been god awful up until this point. So
there's grateful for the god awful.
I mean, why not? Why not have fun? You know, I'm either going to continue to torture myself in front of my favorite artists or I'm going to have fun and put a smile on my face. So I said, you know what? I'm really happy that I'm here. Let's start to have some fun. And as I'm sitting alone, drinking a water this time, I'm thinking about all of this advice that I've gotten over the past years and like, what are other things I can lean into while being here to try and find some sense of belonging in a place that I feel I don't belong.
Yeah.
And I think back to this piece of advice that one of my amazing mentors, Sean Holt, who is the vice dean at the Thornton School of Music at USC, gave to me. And he said, you know, because you're a beginner, Kendall, these rooms that you're going to start to walk into and these experiences that you're going to start to have, you can't be walking in there with some massive ego and some big head on your shoulders thinking, you know, I know best, I know this. That's not the way to go about this, is to be like, I know everything. But instead, you should walk into those rooms with a learner's posture and lean into the gratitude that you have for learning all that you're going to learn. And he said, every room that you walk into, enter with a learner's posture, but also know in the back of your mind that you have something to give to the people in that room that they don't have. and that you might not even know you have to give, but there's a reason you're in that room, and you're going to give them something that they don't know they needed, just like they're going to give you something you don't know you needed. Mic drop. Thank you, Sean.
Can I just stop there?
Yeah.
I wish I had known that when I walked into the room in Los Angeles, because I walked in there and I felt like, oh my God, these are people I admire, or they're famous, or they're known, or they're doing cool things. I'm not doing anything. I'm a nobody. I don't have anything yet. And yet, that's the important part, yet. It's not that you can't do it. It's that you haven't done it yet. But if I had been able to flip to a state of, I'm just so grateful to be here, and I am going to introduce myself to everybody, and I am going to learn as much as I can, and I'm going to soak things up, and I'm going to be like a beginner. If you were in my shoes, what's one piece of advice you would have? Like, just soak it all up and in. And I like, it would have flipped off the insecurity that imposter syndrome can overwhelm you with, because when you get up in your head and you start going, I don't belong, and you become very intellectual about it, you isolate yourself. And you cut yourself off from both what you can get and gain from the room and what you can give. Mm-hmm. Because every time you talk to somebody who is beginning at something you're really good at, their enthusiasm and passion always rubs off on you.
Yeah.
And so it's
I
true.
was told that.
What do you mean?
I mean, so a lot of things happened, but I just started to relax into it, and I started to meet people.
How did you meet them?
Well, the family connection that I had who invited me to the festival had a few friends there, and he introduced me to those people who I really hit it off with, and we started talking, and it was the first time that I was talking to people, but it was the first time that I was able to just own where I was at and say, I'm an artist, I'm a beginner, I don't have anything out, I'm just in my curative space right now. I'm working on some stuff. I'm really excited about it. I'm not trying to rush the process. And I think saying that and just speaking that out into the universe was sort of a weight lifted. But just being able to meet people and tell them that I'm a beginner and that I'm so excited and that I'm so grateful to learn from them and to be just surrounded by the greats and all these people that I've just been so inspired by for the past few years was enough, you know?
What happened?
Well, they were so nice, and they welcomed me in, and they took me under their wing and introduced me to a bunch of cool people, and nobody was quick to judge me that I was a beginner. And I had a few people even say, you know, it's so inspiring being around you, because we now have to make ends meet by doing this, and we pay our bills doing this, but it's so cool to be surrounded by someone that's just so fresh off and ready to go. And it reminds us all of the reason that we started, which is because we fell in love with it. And like, we can feel that love coming off of you. And it just reminds us of why we do this, because some days it gets long and it gets hard and we don't want to do it. And it's hard to be so in love with the thing that also pays your bills, but it's so nice being around you and being around somebody that's just so excited about it. And that was just so validating, because they weren't complimenting my original music, but they were just complimenting my spirit and my ambition and my drive and my passion, which is like what I needed to be complimented on at this phase in my journey.
It's actually more important than being complimented on the
music.
Always.
And so I made a bunch of friends, and I even got the chance to perform at this late night performance. And after I performed, I had a bunch of people ask if they wanted to collaborate with me and write music with me. And it was just really awesome. I think once I sort of owned where I'm at, which is a beginner, I'm not an imposter as a beginner, you know, because that's what I am.
Wait, say that again.
I'm not an imposter if I'm a beginner, because that's what I am.
Oh my God. Kendall, that's genius.
Well, I think you can diffuse the imposter syndrome if you just accept where you're at. I felt like an imposter around all of my favorite artists because of what they have accomplished that I haven't yet. But if I just give myself the space to meet me where I'm at,
yeah,
then the imposter syndrome sort of disappears. Does that make sense?
It not only makes sense, but I have so many like ahas and light bulbs blinking. It's like a galaxy in my mind.
Okay.
You're not an imposter. You're just a beginner.
Yes.
And what I also love about those moments where you're new to something, you're learning, you're in a new job. If you start at a new school, you feel like an imposter, that everybody always has friends. When you move to a new neighborhood, when you try something new. And I think so many of us are so terrified of feeling like a beginner or feeling mediocre at something that we don't give ourselves permission to just be a beginner, because we think people are going to like us more if we have it all figured out. And the
No,
truth is nobody
course
has
not.
it figured out completely.
No.
The people that you admire are tired of touring. And so the passion and the beginner's mindset infuses them with something. And I have so many takeaways from this conversation, Ken. I knew that I would. Number one, the next time that you're in a situation where you feel like you don't belong or you get up in your head, recognize it and flip it to gratitude. Be grateful that you are here at this new school, or you're here in this new job, or you are here in a room with people that you admire. Adopt that learner's, beginner's mindset and just absorb as much as you can. Another thing that you said that I think is brilliant is that as soon as you gave yourself grace to just be where you are and to say it out loud.
Well, I have something to say about that.
Okay.
Another way to think about it, and this is another piece of advice that I got from Sean Holt, is that you become one of the most powerful people in the room when you beat everybody to your inconvenient truths.
What does that mean?
It means if you're a beginner and you don't have music out on Spotify, just say it. And just say, I'm feeling pretty embarrassed and feeling a little bit out of place.
Say it. I love that.
Instead of trying to pretend like you have it all figured out when you walk into this room, just beat everybody to your inconvenient truths. It's inconvenient that I don't have music out. It's inconvenient that I haven't gone on tour. It feels inconvenient that I don't have fans or a social media following. And so instead of pretending like I have it all figured out and I'm sitting in this room, I'm just going to be honest and I'm just going to be vulnerable, because if you come from a place of vulnerability, you're definitely going to make connection.
What happened the first time you said to somebody in that artist tent, well, I haven't released any music yet?
Well, let me talk about how it felt to say that.
Yes.
Because it was horrible.
Okay, so say it.
I mean, the first time that I kind of recognized that I was a beginner and was able to say it out loud was when I would be talking to people. And then, of course, the question comes, well, do you have any music out? And my jaw would lock. And I somehow spit out no and said, I just graduated from school. I'm working on some music now. I'm trying to figure out who I am, what I want to sound like, what I want to say, and I'm not there yet. And I'm really excited for the process. But no, I don't have music out. I don't have an Instagram page with anything to look at least. I don't have fans. I don't have any of it. I don't have TikTok. I don't have it. And it's definitely scary being around everybody here that not only has that, but has gone around the country showing people. But I'm a beginner and I'm excited, and I'm so happy that I get to be here around all of you who are people that I've looked up to for however long. And yeah, I'm just really excited. And, I was met with so much, oh my gosh, that's awesome. You should take your time. You're so young. You have all the time in the world. Just things that I've been told for so long, but hearing it from these people that I've been so inspired by for so long was so validating. You have to be bad at something before you're good at it. And people are so afraid of being not so great at something that they don't even try.
Yeah. And they're embarrassed to admit that they're at the beginning of trying.
Yeah, and also every single person that in that tent has probably had an experience like mine.
Of course. And you know what I also find interesting is that you call yourself a beginner, but you just graduated from the top program in the world for pop music at USC Thornton, studying with Grammy award-winning artists and collaborating with plenty of musicians. You're not exactly a beginner, but you're a beginner on the journey of the touring artist world. And so I think that there are levels to that beginner mindset, because when I started this podcast, I was not a beginner when it comes to audio. I hosted a radio show in 2008 to 2000, like for years, and won awards for it. And then I've published all these audiobooks with Audible, but I felt like a beginner that had never done a podcast.
Yeah.
When I
no,
started
I'm not
this,
a beginner singer. I am a beginner songwriter.
Yes.
I am a beginner in an artist tent. I am a
Yes.
beginner talking to my favorite artists. I am a beginner waiting in line behind my favorite musicians. Like I am, there are so many things that I have. I mean, it all ties back into there's something to learn and there's something to give. You can't,
Yes.
It's push and pull, but it's mostly balance. I think if you're only on I have something to give, you're going to get too caught up in your own world, and you're not going to be able to feel into the gratitude and the service, and you're going to be too like obsessed with yourself.
What
and
do I give?
Can I
What do
give?
I
What
give?
do I give? What do I give? It's
Well,
all about
what I
me.
found is-
It's all about me, and it's not. But, and then if you get into the what do I have to learn? What do I have to learn? What do I have to learn? You're just going to dumb yourself down so much that you don't even give yourself the opportunity to express what you do have to give. And so it's practice, and I definitely have not figured it out, although it sort of maybe on this podcast sounds like I have, but the balance thing, it's an everyday practice. But
well, one thing I want to point out based on what you told me is that the first thing that you gave is your sense of humor.
yeah,
It had nothing to do with music. And so you started cracking jokes with somebody that you were introduced to that is highly regarded, and it was your humor and your passion and your beginner mindset that broke the ice
yeah,
and had you make this incredible connection with somebody who will probably be part of your career moving forward.
yeah. And I think another way that I think about imposter syndrome is I think about the fact that I'm a nobody. That's kind of what I was feeling. I was literally texting my friends who I graduated with at USC, who are incredible musicians and have music out and are just my best friends. And I was texting them being like, I'm a nobody. Why am I here? So-and-so just walked by. I'm drinking alone. Help me. And they were all responding like, you're Kendall effing Robbins. You're not a nobody. Like, go be you. Go have fun. You're supposed to be there. Love you guys. You know who you are. And I think in saying like I'm a nobody, the only reason that I was thinking everybody around me were somebodies is because of the accolades and the accomplishments that they've achieved
And the
But-
followings.
Yeah,
and
the
fans.
followings, but like the fans, at least in my opinion, the fans, the awards, the accolades, the attention that all of the people I was surrounded by have are not who they are. But as I was thinking about this, I was going, so-and-so is not her Grammy. She's her. I don't have music out right now, but I'm still me, and I can still be me. And at the end of the day, we're all kind of nobodies, because people think we're somebodies when we have stuff to show, but without that stuff, we're just us, which is, I mean, the beauty of life. We're all just us.
You know what's interesting is that you just said people think you're somebody because you have something to show for yourself. But we're all just nobodies because there is something that is special about you that nobody else has.
Yeah, that's a great way of thinking about it. And I think the word nobody it's so negative, and people think, oh, I'm invisible. No, but like, we're all kind of just doing our own thing. Because I don't have music out, because I don't have these awards, because I don't have this following that everyone around me has, I'm like, you know what? All I can do is just be me. And that's kind of all that I'm going to do throughout my career. And so I'm just going to do that right now, because I hope that even when I do have those accolades and when I do have those fans, I can still be me. And I'm sure that all these people around me at some capacity are just trying to be themselves too. So in doing that, I think I learned, and I hope you guys can learn, that in just being me, the things that I started to give had nothing to do with my music and nothing to do with my voice and nothing to do with anything that I thought it would have to do with. The things that you are going to give in these rooms that you walk into where you feel like an imposter will likely have nothing to do with that actual career or the skill set you mastered in college to get the job that you got. It's probably going to have to do with your humanity or some experience you had that's relatable, or your sense of humor, or the fact that you're passionate about sewing. I don't know, like who knows what it's going to be, but I think what I learned this past weekend is that people felt a magnetic pull towards me because of my humor and because of my inappropriate jokes that really, I guess, brought some laughter to the rooms that I was walking into. And in giving people comedic relief and giving people laughter, that's what they learned from me. And in turn, I started learning from them, and the doors all opened.
Yep.
And like lean into you in those rooms. Just be you. Recognize you're a beginner. Beat people to your inconvenient truths. Be
By
honest
telling them.
by telling them. Just be you. And I think if you're you, you're going to give and you will also receive. If I was trying to be somebody that had all these awards or had a TikTok following or whatever it may be, I wouldn't be Kendall.
Right.
And I was Kendall, and she had a great weekend. I made a bunch of friends. I ate good food. I saw old friends. I made new friends.
One of the things that will beat imposter syndrome is when you start to also tell yourself that there's a reason I'm here.
We didn't talk about this enough, I don't think.
Okay, well, there's a reason why I'm here. You don't have to be like, I deserve to be in this room. Grab faith. You're in the room for a reason, and you might not know why, but have faith that there is a reason for you to be in that room. There's something for you to learn. There's something for you to give, and that's why you're there.
Yeah.
Because I see this a lot, and when you tell yourself that you have faith that there's a reason why you're sitting in this room, there's a reason why you're near these people, there's a reason why you're at this school. And if you can't muster up the belief that you deserve to be, anchor yourself in that there's something for you to learn, there's a lesson, there's something for you to discover about yourself. Because when I look back at my experience 9 years ago, and I was in that room with all those people I admired, all these famous people, and I felt so unworthy, there was a reason I was supposed to be there. It helped me discover that discomfort that I felt, that I don't want to feel like this in rooms like this. I want to feel like I'm somebody who's contributed something that's important. That's what started to motivate me. That's what got me to accept and confront the fact that I really wanted to be a person that had published a book. Now, I didn't publish it in the next year. I showed up in rooms for the next 2-3 years, Ken, still feeling like an imposter.
I'm sure it never goes away.
It does. There are new levels to it. Like when I met Alex Cooper and was on her show, Call Her Daddy, and I was in awe of her, the #1 female ranked podcaster in the world, and I hadn't even launched my podcast yet. You know what? Just absorbed everything I could learn from her, and I learned a lot. She's amazing. So there are going to be moments where you feel that because you're going to be a beginner again. But if you really embrace what Ken and I are sharing with you, you don't have to destroy yourself. You can immediately catch yourself and flip it into a learning opportunity and a gratitude moment, and reminding yourself that, wow, I have faith that I'm here right now because there is something I'm meant to learn by doing this right now. So I'm not going to get it right. I'm not going to be perfect. I'm going to be me, and I'm going to learn. And that has so helped me, and I think it'll help you listening right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the thing you also said about the fact that imposter syndrome, I think, comes from a place of, well, I really want this to feel like me. The only reason that you're feeling that imposter syndrome is because you want to not feel like an imposter in those rooms. You want to be a badass in all those rooms.
Yes, this is a good thing.
It's a good thing. It's telling you, it's kind of like your mental compass going like, yeah, this is what you want.
There's
a
work to do.
reminder. There's a work to do. I mean, I don't feel imposter syndrome when I go to like a financial convention because I don't know anything about that,
And I don't want to.
and I don't have a passion to. I don't
great
desire
point.
to. I'm not like, oh my God, I'm never gonna make it in this. I'm like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be in this room. I want to be in a different room. But it's the rooms that you want to be in that you're like, oh fuck, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here. It tests everything. It makes you look in the mirror. It kind of like shines a light on the things you don't know about what you're so obsessed with and makes you like want them.
And that scares the shit out of you.
Yeah. No, I think it's true. I think it comes back to the idea that some days you're going to be a beginner in the room. Some days you're going to be the expert. If you find yourself in that room or that tent or backstage or in that workout class, wherever you are, and you start to feel that creeping up, I shouldn't be here. I don't belong here. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. Just trust that you're supposed to be there and that there's a reason that you're there, and take on your learner's posture. If you feel like you don't know anything and everybody else does, then just get really grateful and really excited to learn from the other people, and don't leave the room.
Don't leave that room. Today, we're going to talk about the biggest fear that people have in life. You know, Seinfeld famously joked that the person in the coffin isn't scared. It's the person who has to speak about the person in the coffin who is. The fear of public speaking is the number one fear that people have. And I don't even mean necessarily talking on a stage like I do for a living. I'm talking about the fear of speaking in public, sharing your ideas at work, expressing what you need to other people, having hard conversations with friends and family, talking at a meeting at school, pushing back on something with a doctor, like just being able to express yourself. And the reason why this is such a huge fear for people is because it is a moment of intense vulnerability. The second that you go to speak at work, what happens? Everybody turns and all eyes are on you. And suddenly you feel like there's a spotlight on you and you get really worried about being judged. Same thing happens when you have to speak in class, right? When you got called on in class, most people get a little nervous. A lot of people hated that moment in elementary school when you had to read out loud. That's a moment of public speaking. And we are so afraid in that moment when the spotlight is on us. And I've shared in a number of episodes that I used to be terrified of public speaking. I would turn bright red when I got called on as a little kid. In law school, I would start coughing attacks or I would leave the room. As a young lawyer, I would wear a scarf because I'd get these neck rashes as I was talking to the judge and to the prosecutor in a small courtroom. And I just figured I would be the kind of person that always had a bright red face, always had an awful case of hives on my chest, always felt my tongue going dry. And I hated it. I hated it, hated it, hated it. And today what I'm going to talk about is how I went from being afraid of public speaking to becoming, I'm almost like, it sounds braggadocious, but the truth is I went from that to being the most successful female speaker in the world. More than 111 speeches a year on the corporate circuit. So Microsoft, Starbucks, JP Morgan, AT&T, any kind of company you can imagine. I've been there. Now, the first question I always get is, how did you get into the speaking business and how did you become the most sought after female speaker on the corporate speaking circuit, Mel? Well, the truth is I didn't set out to do anything. I've told you guys a story about how that TEDx talk happened by accident in 2011 and how I had a 21-minute long panic attack while I was giving that talk, and I never thought I would speak ever, ever, ever again. And then something crazy happened. A year later, somebody put the TEDx talk online, and for another year, it went crazy viral. And I didn't even know it was online. And so we're talking 2013. Now, by mid-2013, people start to reach out to me on Facebook and say, hey, I saw that thing in San Francisco. And I'm like, were you there? They're like, no, it's online. I'm like, it's online? And I realized, holy cow, this thing's online. It's got like 1 million views. That's crazy. And people kept reaching out. And it was mainly women's conferences. and they were asking if I wanted to come and do like a breakout session, and they wanted me to just repeat that TEDx talk. And so I had no idea that this was an industry or a business. I looked at speaking as something that famous people do, something that sports people do, something that people that are major authors must do. So I didn't have a book. I didn't have anything. I just had my little secret 5-second rule in my back pocket. I had a TEDx talk that had mistakenly gone viral online. And now I had people asking me if I would come and I would talk in breakout sessions at women's conferences. And I'm like, okay, that sounds fun. Now, keep in mind in my life, this is the moment when Chris has left the restaurant industry. He is bottomed out, not functioning, focused on getting sober. And I am working 2 jobs trying to keep things afloat. I mean, it is a really scrambling time in our life. And so I said yes to these things. And I'll never forget it. In 2013, I did 7 talks, I think it was, all for free. I had no idea that people got paid to do this. And I was doing it because I wanted to escape the pressure of my life. And if I'm being perfectly honest, as nervous as I was about doing this, and I'd get a big neck rash and I'd turn bright red in my face, as nervous as I was, there was something about being asked to tell my story and inspire other people that really lifted me up and made me feel, I don't know, like it's sort of like how you fluff a pillow up when it's looking deflated. It just lifted my spirits a little bit to have the focus be on helping other people. And so it was like a lifeline, but I was still so nervous. When I tell you I was nervous, I mean, I was so nervous. I not only wore Spanx, I would put like a pad in the Spanx because I was sweating so much. I had all kinds of wardrobe fails because I would literally sweat like Niagara Falls. That's what I do. I have a hot flash as I get nervous. So I'll never forget it. It was the Pennsylvania Women's Conference. It was Hillary Clinton, I think, was the keynote speaker. And then there was this incredible woman who was the principal of Strawberry Hill Mansion, who I just love. And she spoke in the main room, 14,000 women there. And I was in this breakout session. And it was the largest room I had ever been in. I almost had a heart attack. There were like 1,000 seats set up. And I had never been in a room that size. So I give this talk, which was largely just a mimic of the TEDx talk that I did. And this woman comes up to me afterwards and she's like, oh my God, you were so great. You know, which was really nice to hear. And she said, can I ask you a question? You know, I was also a speaker this morning. I was in a breakout room on a panel and I just want to ask you a question, speaker to speaker. And I was like, of course. And she said, did you get your check yet? And I said, check? Wait a minute, you got paid for this? And she looked at me with horror and said, oh my God, I'm really sorry. I just assumed like you had I just assumed that you got paid. I'm like, people get paid for this? Like normal people get paid for this? And I was so flabbergasted. It was one of those moments where you're just like, am I the stupidest fucking idiot on the planet? Does everybody else know this shit but me? And I was so dumbfounded that for 2 weeks, I was just like stunned at what an idiot I was. I didn't even think to ask anybody to pay me to do this, because I didn't think I was any good at it. So I made myself a promise. I said, you know what? I have no idea what to charge. You don't have a book. You should probably write one of those too. But first you got to figure out how to keep the lights on in the house and keep the family afloat and keep paying the bills. And I thought, here's what I'm going to do. I am going to just, when the next person calls and says, we'd like to book you to speak, I'm going to pause, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, take a breath. And then I'm going to say, I think I'm available. What's your budget? And then I'm going to wait. I'm going to listen to the number, and then I'm going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, pause. Normally I'm double. And pause and see what happens. Because I didn't even know what to price myself at. So 2 weeks later, the phone rings. And it's this guy in Dallas, Darren Paul. And he had been in the speaking business for like 20 years. And he says, you know, blah, 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 heard the da-da-da-da-da. And I got to thank his wife, Lori, because she's the one that saw my TEDx talk going viral on Facebook. And she said to her husband, you got to book this woman for our sales conference for Jay Hilburn. And so Darren calls me, first phone call I received, no joke, when I've made myself this promise. And he asked if I'm available 5 months from now in Dallas in August to speak at the National Sales Conference for this company, Jay Hilburn. I said, I think I'm available. What's your budget? And he said, $10,000. I dropped the fucking phone. We had liens on our 10,000. I had no fucking idea, people. What the 10,000 fucking dollars? Are you fucking kidding me? I will literally. I'll strip for that. I mean, that's unbelievable. So I forgot the second part. I was like, okay, I'm in. Yes. Now, luckily, I was so nervous. And, sometimes fear is a fantastic thing because it motivates you. I was so nervous because I felt so unworthy of that amount of money that I did something really smart, and fear motivated me to do this. I was so nervous that I would fall flat on my face because I believed I was not worthy of that kind of money because I had never made that kind of money. That I used half of the budget to pay a graphic designer to help me create a PowerPoint because I needed at least something that would look like that. And I practiced and I practiced and I prepared. And that's one of the big things that you got to take away. One of the best freaking tools for nerves is preparation. The more you prepare, what you're actually doing is working through your own resistance to this shit. You're creating muscle memory. You're rehearsing. Will you choke? Maybe, but not after I teach you the tools that I'm going to teach you today. But you will never get better or conquer your fear of doing this, public speaking, if you're unwilling to prepare. So part of the nerves might be that you're not even preparing enough. You're not rehearsing. You're not rehearsing in front of people. You're not taking the time to edit your mark. Like, it takes time, and rehearsal is so important. If you prepare, you're removing nerves. You're setting yourself up to win. And so think about preparing like you're just building this muscle. It doesn't take the nerves away or the fear away or the stakes away, but by God, it's going to help these tools work because you will have the preparation. There's this really famous quote that I love that I talk about all the time. It's by Charlie Bird Parker. I don't even know if this is a real story, but I love this quote. Apparently, Charlie Bird Parker, the famous jazz musician, was asked by a journalist who was writing a big article about him, how the hell do you do what you do with that horn? And you know what Charlie Bird Parker said? He said, well, first you got to learn your instrument. And that takes years, decades of practice. You got to study it. You got to rehearse. You got to do your scales. You got to practice over and over and over and over and over again until you learn that instrument. And then you forget all that shit they taught you and you just wail. And so preparation allows you to tap into your genius. Preparation is what allows you to improv, to freestyle, to be fully express the highest you, to channel, to like tap into something. And it's in there in you. That's why you feel this push-pull and this desire to show up more in your life. So I spent all this time preparing. And I showed up, and there are moments in your life that really matter. And this was one of them. I met this moment. I stepped on that stage with my neck rash and my rosy cheeks and my dry mouth, and I fucking destroyed it. Because I had prepared because I was afraid. Now, I also had the biggest wardrobe failure I have ever had on a stage. So I wore this dress because at the time I was a commentator for CNN, and I used to wear this dress all the time on CNN. And I thought, okay, if somebody's paying you that kind of money, you got to look like you're on TV. So I wore this like kind of power lady dress. You can already imagine it, right? It's got like sort of the V-neck and the pencil skirt. And it's hard to walk in. It looks good on television, but you're not moving and you're sitting in a chair. I had never looked at it with a light behind me. And at the end of the speech, I just fillet this thing. I walk off that stage. It was the first time I'd ever been projected on a jumbotron in an arena. And after the speech, this woman came up to me. She was darling. She's like, oh my God, I love the 5-second rule. Thank you so much for those. It was amazing. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to pay my mortgage this month. This is great. And she said, you were so great. I have to tell you something. And I'm like, what? She said, don't ever wear that dress again. I said, why? She said, I don't even want to tell you this. I said, what? She said, I could not only see that you were wearing Spanx, but that you had a thong on underneath them. That dress is so see-through, and you could see it all on the Jumbotron. Okay. We went from winning to wanting to melt and crawl into a hole, but fuck it. You know, I honestly, when you fuck up, you know what the research shows? People like you more. And that shows in that comment. That, by the way, is called the pratfall effect, that your imperfections make you more likable, more trustworthy. It makes you, as an expert, be somebody that people lean toward. And you've had this experience, haven't you? Where you might have somebody that's got a PhD, that's a know-it-all, that's really snooty and talking down to you. You're kind of like, I don't want to learn from you. But when you got somebody that is, you know, on a stage or teaching you something, or just somebody you meet, if there's something that humanizes them, it so builds trust. And that's an important thing to understand, because the idea here is not that you're going to get it perfect. It's that you're willing to try. So maybe that's why I destroyed it. I don't know. Everyone was rooting for me because you could see the Spanx and the thong underneath the dress. But that dress went in the freaking trash can at the hotel, never to see the light of day again, although I hope somebody pulled it out and used it. But I never looked back from that moment, because Darren, who booked me, had been in this business for 20 years. And he said, I got to tell you, you are top 3 of all time and the single best female speaker I have ever seen in my entire life. Who manages your business? And I said, you do. And he has run my speaking business ever since. And so along the way, it took me several years to truly get over my nerves. And I don't get nervous. I care deeply. I get super intentional about the stakes, because I really want to make a huge difference, and I want to destroy it on these stages and entertain and empower and inspire and all of it. So I do care about how I perform when I am stepping on a stage or I'm behind this mic. But I have come up with incredible ways to not only face my fear of public speaking, but to conquer it, and to use science and really amazing mental reframes to tame those nerves. And that's what I'm going to teach you today. Because you know what I want for you? I want your fullest expression. I want fear to stop holding you back. I want you to trust fall into your life. I want you to take that first step and climb the staircase to the things that you want in your life. And there are too many places where fear holds you back and keeps you silent and has you questioning yourself. And so that was me too. And I just chipped away at this fucker. And I am so glad that I did, because I just can't even imagine how much I would yearn for what I'm doing now without even realizing it. Welcome back.
Nice energy.
Yeah, good energy. So I'm back with my husband, Chris.
Hi, Mel.
Hi, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And I was just sharing with everybody that when I first stumbled upon this high five habit and I started doing it, and then I asked you if you would try it for 5 days. Do you remember that?
Definitely. And I said NFW.
Well, you did have a very deliberate, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I immediately thought it was the dumbest idea ever. I found it ludicrous, quite honestly. Let's go to the mirror. Let's high five ourselves, and this is going to solve all problems.
Well, I'm not saying it's going to solve all problems, but I know based on the research, and I know based on the testimonials of 175,000 people and the testimonials that roll in every single freaking day that are so profound, that when you take on this habit, it has a shocking impact on your brain and how you see yourself and the person in the mirror. And that kicks open a door to an entirely new set of habits and an entirely new possibility. And, we're laughing, but when I kept pushing you, because I'm like, dude, you're my husband. I need you to try this. I want you to take the high five challenge. I want you to do this for 5 days. You shared with me something that I didn't know. And the real reason why you thought this was stupid, when you dug a little deeper, it was really sad. And honestly, it was scary to hear as your spouse. So would you share with everybody sort of the deeper insight as to why you kind of had that reaction?
I think at the time I related to the idea of a high five to myself as being encouragement, like looking forward. The idea that you would high five yourself to inspire forward action. And yet I find that the power of that high five in the mirror is less your hand meeting the mirror and more your eyes meeting your eyes. And that's where the struggle was. Because when I took that challenge on, I remember really the high five was easy. The looking at myself in the mirror, that was not easy.
Why? Can I hold your hand?
I think it was not easy because there was so much reflection on the past. I was looking back. I was not seeing somebody that deserved a high five. I saw failure. I saw upset. I saw just not living up to the expectation that I think I had set for myself. And I'm sure that society's expectations were also influencing that. But just where I was at the time, I didn't feel like I deserved that high five. So I think that was probably the underlying reason why my reaction to the idea of doing it was, this is stupid. When the truth is that I was not happy with myself and didn't think a high five was deserved.
It's really hard to hear how long you felt that way about yourself. Because I stood next to you for years, the sink right next to you. And when I looked at you, like, I saw the world's best dad, amazing husband. I saw somebody who was absolutely integral to helping me build my business. I felt grateful for you. I didn't know you thought any of those things. You just kind of put on a smile and carried on. You were so sort of stoic about it. So can you explain, because I think that there's a lot of people, especially men, that really beat the hell out of themselves when their career doesn't go how they thought it was going to go, or they get laid off, or, you become an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurship looks fucking glamorous. It's a bitch, especially in the restaurant business. And you had been an entrepreneur. So can you just share just a little bit of context for people so they understand, like, how long you would look in the mirror and see somebody that failed and why you felt that way?
Oh, it had to have been 15 years anyway.
15 years?
Oh yeah, no, I don't think it was just the unraveling of the restaurant business that was the beginning of that. I think that I'm not sure exactly when, but as you and I know, like looking back on my very colorful career, I am grateful today for all of the things that I did, but having moved through so many different roles and responsibilities and industries and companies and
Job
the
changes.
job changes, and I just never ever related to myself like I was succeeding in a professional sense. And I, of course, concluded that therein lies the source of my failure, because my job here is to be the provider, the proverbial provider, and to go, quote, make it happen. And so the discomfort with myself and my progress professionally was absolutely what I think dragged me down. And yeah, being an entrepreneur can seem glamorous. I would say that at the time when this whole thing and the High Five Challenge or the book came out, you and I we were in the throes of it. I mean, talk about just getting up and putting on your boots and just diving into the fire every day. There wasn't, at least just didn't seem like there was a moment to actually stop and acknowledge the good. And quite frankly, you weren't acknowledging me like that. You might have seen me as a good husband or father or, business partner, but those words weren't being shared between us. And so naturally, I didn't get that reinforcement verbally from you. But I also think that being in the thick of it and running as fast and as hard as we were didn't, the idea of stopping and looking in the mirror and seeing myself truly for who I am and the good that I have done and acknowledging all the failures as being a source of powerful learning and all that stuff. Fuck that. Like I wasn't, and that's why I say, I think the hardest part was to stand in front of that mirror and see your whole self. And for guys, I think that is, for many, borderline feels impossible. Because that's what we do. We just get up, put the boots on, and go, okay, Mel needs something, the wife needs something, the kids need something, the employer needs something.
The dogs.
Okay, let me jam in a quick workout. Maybe because maybe I'm thoughtful about what my mind, body, or spirit needs, but also something that I think is an afterthought for guys. And we put everybody but ourselves first. So the act of standing in front of a mirror and high-fiving yourself and looking yourself in the eyes and saying, I love you, outlandish concept. But hugely, hugely important. And it doesn't happen unless you're sort of willing to really stop and slow down and consider that you matter more than your wife, your kids, your employer, the rest of it. And I think that's part of what has, I think maybe over the years, dragged me down, was paying zero attention to me and paying all the attention, or so I felt, on everybody outside of me.
And providing and trying to prove that you were successful and trying to earn money and live up to also your dad's expectations.
Yeah, well, if you really want to go back to the root of it all, we could be here all day. But yes, certainly growing up with a father that did what he did and accomplished what he accomplished, and even just the basics of putting on a suit and tie and packing a briefcase and catching a train and working in a skyrise, a high rise in Manhattan. All of those things were just visual cues of what I thought I should be doing. None of which, of course, played out other than the occasional suit until until ties and the rest of it flew out the window. But just I wasn't being like my dad, which is what I thought I was supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. So you get really emotional when you talk about looking at yourself in the mirror. And I want to hear you talk more about that, because I know that it's a bunch of things that come up for you because you're not in that place that you were in where you look in the mirror and see a failure. And you don't believe those things about yourself. And the challenge of simply standing in the mirror and looking in the eyes, I agree with you. That's the hardest part of adding this habit to your morning routine. Just put the toothbrush down and be with the person in the mirror. Look them in the eyes and don't see a reflection, see a human being who needs you. That half of men and women can't or won't look at themselves. And
it's a good point, because you can, it sounds weird, but you can look right through yourself in the mirror.
yes.
Versus actually seeing yourself.
Yes. And if you aren't looking through yourself, a lot of us look at all the things we don't like. And so even gazing at ourselves is an act of self-criticism, because we're like, I hate my this, I hate my that, my, neck is saggy. And, you have since done tremendous amount of therapy. You and I have done the psychedelic supervised therapies. You are in the middle of getting your master's in spiritual transpersonal psychology. You are getting your training to be a death doula and to sit with people at the end of their life. And you have also started a men's retreat called Soul Degree. And you've been leading retreats with men for 4 years, Chris. And there's a lot of emotion that comes up for you. 6 years, sorry, 6 years. Terrible wife. Can I get a high five? Cheer me on, even though. Thank you. Don't let go of my hand. I don't want to hold your hand. You have been in the presence of so many men. And you've even had Oakley reach out to you and had you counsel some of his friends through anxiety and through issues. And I know there's a lot of emotion there. So, can you just speak to the men and the boys that may be listening, or to the people in their lives that love them, about what you've witnessed, about, the kind of coaching that you lead, the meditation circles that you lead, not from what you want people to know about the importance of being able to look yourself in the mirror and learn how to take actions to truly support and love yourself, and that this is a very foreign concept for boys and men.
Yeah, I think that I often talk about Soul Degree as being a space that I hold for men that allows them to slow down, when the truth of the matter is it's in the slowdown that all of those beautiful things can take place. And I think that the reason why there's a lot of emotion there for me, particularly with guys, is that, and I speak to all the partners and the spouses, the people that have sons and fathers and male counterparts, is that
Brothers.
Yes, it is the responsibility of the individual to be able to look in the mirror and see the whole person, foibles and all. But why there is a lot of emotion is because, in my experience in sitting with men, very rarely do men feel truly seen and heard. And that's not
on an emotional level. So let's go back to the mirror and what you experienced when for 5 days in a row, you made it a habit to stop at a time in your life where you still were beating the shit out of yourself and look yourself in the eyes and either say, I love you, which I know is one of your practices, to look yourself in the eyes in the mirror and say, I love you. But, you know, to me, one of the powers of the high five habit is there's a lot of people that won't say, I love you. And so the physical action of giving the person in the mirror a high five demonstrates love. And so what did you experience for yourself personally in terms of the science working, the shift in how you started to see the person in the mirror?
Well, transformation doesn't happen without repetition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at one point, I don't remember if this is in the book, but the idea that there's so many mirrors out there in the world. I mean, you come across a mirror a dozen times a day, potentially.
Yeah.
And I tried that during the challenge. It wasn't just brush teeth in the morning one time. It was whenever I saw a mirror. And I think that's critically important, because this high five thing, this idea, it's not, I know you call it the high five habit, but it's one of those things that it almost feels elusive in terms of becoming habitual. And that's because next week or next year, some shit might go down,
right,
and you might do something, or something happens where you really feel immediately lousy about yourself. And so even though there may be some habit of you getting up saying, I love you, or high-fiving yourself, your life circumstance is going to get in the way.
Right.
Frequently.
Correct. Just like with exercise or drinking your water or getting a good night's sleep. But when you come back to that moment, because for me personally, it's a moment of joining in with myself. It's a moment of partnership with myself. And you used to coach almost all the, teams that our kids played on when they were little, when they're really little. And as a coach, like if you think about when you high five a kid, it's either to congratulate them for something that they did, or it's to help them shake something off and know that there's somebody that believes in them and to get back out there into the game. And for me, whether it's the high five I give myself in the morning after I brush my teeth and the moment I take to look at myself in the mirror, or like you said, I don't always high five myself throughout the day when I see a mirror, but I'll tell you something. I look at myself differently. And I know you do too. And so the importance of this, because it is something that most of us don't do. I think we casually slip into the subconscious where we're beating ourselves up and we're on autopilot. And every time you pass a mirror, you have a chance to look yourself in the eyes and see a person that is worthy of celebrating, of cheering for, of believing in, simply because you're here. That to me is the power of this. What is the power of it for you?
I'm still a little steeped in acknowledging that, yes, I'm here, but not like here physically and how great this is that I'm alive and breathing. Yes, that's all amazing. But when I look in the mirror, it's what I see is I guess I can see the age and the wisdom and the learning more, that I'm more grateful for that, for having been through what I've been through, and so the looking in the mirror and the acknowledging of myself, it's rarely like, okay, you got this, all right, your next meeting or your next whatever.
Maybe it should be.
Maybe, but like I said, I look forward less than I do look back.
Great.
And today in the look back, there's more gratitude and appreciation and a willingness to high five those elements of me, which for so many years I hated.
When you look in the mirror, can you describe the person you see today?
I see a man for who he is. And I see a man with different but the same number of battle scars that every other man, I think, has, in the sense of what I've been through, what's worked, what hasn't worked. I see a man who's worked his ass off, but not necessarily with the right mindset or for the right reasons. Like if there's regret, that's probably the area to dig in for me, is just being able to completely release that. Yeah, I made that choice for that reason at that time with the tools that I had,
right,
and that's all I knew. And so I see today, looking in the mirror, somebody that is accepting of those decisions and choices that I made, and even acknowledging the pain and the struggle that I was also blind to. I mean, the idea of sort of coming to terms with having battled depression, I think I was oblivious to that for many years just didn't even occur to me. That might have been part of the resistance too, if you're battling depression, a high five in the mirror definitely feels like the last thing in the world you would ever pursue.
But it's something that you should.
Oh, without a doubt. I see a man I love. I see a man I'm proud of. I see a great father. And I see a great partner to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a man who has accomplished a lot in a short period of time. I see a man who's doing his best and deserves a look in the eye and a high five.
All right. Well, I'll give you one. Oh, my God.
I think one last thing I want to say to the men out there, any man who feels a sense of failure or that they haven't lived up to their own expectations or those outside of them, any man who's been battling with or has battled with addiction or depression or any of these things that drag us down, I strongly encourage you to start with you and to begin with forgiveness. Not always so easy, but without a doubt, I know from my experience, not just me personally, but being in the company of lots of men, that we are all working our ass off to do the right thing. And while we don't always believe that the results live up, it's in the forgiveness and the starting with yourself and the self-acknowledgement.
And I want to go back to what you said in the very beginning, because I know that we're going to get a ton of questions, Chris. Wow. How do I begin that? One step that you could take today is trying this habit of even just looking yourself in the mirror.
I'm shocked that I'm even saying this, given my initial reaction to the high five habit. But I agree. Start right there. Start in the mirror.
Because if you change the story you're telling yourself about the person you see in the mirror, if you change the actions that you take in how you treat the human being in the mirror, if you change what you're thinking when you look in the eyes of the person in the mirror, that is the beginning of forgiving yourself. Like, you will never forgive yourself if you refuse to look yourself in the eyes with compassion and with forgiveness and with understanding. And one of the reasons why I'm going to keep hammering this, everybody, raise your hand and high five the mirror. Because if you're at a place where you are beating the shit out of yourself and you can't stand yourself for whatever reason, whatever you did, we've all done something, you don't have to change your thoughts. The neurobics and the science of simply making the physical gesture of the high five, Chris, and all of the lifetime of positive programming associated with it, it has a chemical, a neurological, a psychological benefit immediately that is grounded in science. And so the physical act does the work for you, and it starts to plow new neural pathways, and it releases dopamine, all of which will help you do the other work that you need to do to walk down the road of forgiving yourself. But if you got to start by simply looking at yourself in the eyes and seeing somebody who is worthy of forgiving, because you are.
Yeah, I can't stress that enough. You could forgive yourself all day long walking down the sidewalk, but that's a futile exercise. The mirror is where it happens, and seeing yourself.
It's one of the reasons why I always sign off the show by telling the person listening that I love you.
I love that about how you sign off. And I know you mean it.
I do mean it, because I just know how many people can't look at themselves in the mirror. Like, it's just so sad. And I know how much self-judgment we all live with, because I've lived with it. I even learned that it's been 15 years today that you really struggled with loving yourself. And it breaks my heart. And it feels good to have somebody tell you that they love you and that you're proud of them. And to some extent, unless you're willing to do the work on yourself, to let love in from yourself, to demonstrate encouragement, support, and love by looking at your eyes in the mirror or high-fiving yourself in the mirror, if you can't do that for yourself, you will never let the love in that is all around you from other people, because you don't believe you're worthy of it, and you're proving it based on your actions. What are you thinking about? Because I can see you getting moved.
Well, I'm always moved by the way that you sign off and tell people I love you. And it ties back to what I was saying earlier, is just my own experience in being in the company of men who don't, they don't feel that. And I guess since a lot of what I've been talking about is directed towards the guys, I would leave you with one last thought. And that is that while you're standing in front of that mirror and you're looking at yourself, you may feel alone, but you are not alone in either the struggle you have with forgiving yourself, or the judgments, or the failures, or whatever that may be. You are not alone.
At a really wild level, there's actually a human being in the mirror who needs you. It's the one person you spend your whole life with. And the moment that you can look them in the eyes and see a human being worth cheering for, you'll realize you aren't alone because you've got yourself. You know, I want to thank you, Chris, and thank you for speaking directly to men, because, you know, everything that you're saying is universal. And I do think it's important, though, for men and boys and people who identify as male, that you hear a male voice saying these things. It is critical that other men realize that your emotional health, your sense of self-esteem, self-awareness, self-love, and going back to the very beginning of what I said at the beginning of this episode today, is that I think we get self-love wrong, Chris, because we think love is a feeling. But the truth is, you only feel loved because of other people's actions. And when it comes to learning to love yourself, you have to start with the actions. Actions that demonstrate love. And when you are able to stand in front of a mirror and look yourself in the eyes, that's an act of love. When you're able to bring compassion and understanding to the person in the mirror, and you see somebody that's trying, and you see somebody that has regrets, and you see somebody who still has an incredible life to live and is worthy of love, that's an act of love. When you raise your hand and high five yourself and the human being in the mirror, that's an act of love. And so I love what you said, because so many of us know and wish that we felt better about ourselves. We wish we would stop beating the shit out of ourselves. We wish that we weren't in our own way. And all the research also shows that the most important habit that has the biggest impact on our lives is being kind to yourself. It's in the actions, everybody. And so I just love that you shared all that. And I love that you're here. And I love you. So you said when you feel like you belong, you have this state of flow. I would also guess that other words that people say is that they're very present.
Yep.
That their minds are not racing ahead. That there is nothing in the moment that you need to manage.
Yeah.
And that there is this peace and freedom.
Like anchoring, like you're calm, you're anchored.
Yep.
There's the absence of the panic or anxiousness or activation.
Yes. And the activation is an interesting word, because I can think to certain friend groups that I was a part of, or certain people I was dating, or certain classes, for example, that I was taking in college, or certain jobs that I hated, where the moment I was walking into the classroom or into work, or I was sitting at a table with my supposed friends, in air quotes, I was not anchored and at peace. I was so active in my mind and thinking about other things and worried about something and not able to feel anchored or at peace in those experiences. And I personally believe, based on the number of people that write in and the size of the audience on our social channels and the podcast, that most people have a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute experience of being activated and not belonging.
Yes.
How does somebody know? And I want you listening to us, I want you to think about, where is the easiest place for somebody to spot this for themselves so that they can recognize a place in their life where they're not able to be their authentic self, and where they get into this particular part of their life and it's very activating.
So I love this question for so many reasons. So first of all, in my book, We've Got This, I introduce this concept, which I call our core wisdom. And in fact, Mel, if you said to me, Ritu, tell everyone today, what is the number one thing that you did to bring more belonging and authenticity into your life, to bring more ease and joy and flow and peace into your life? What was that?
Ritu, tell us the number one thing that you did to bring more joy and ease and peace into your life. I can pick up what you're putting down, woman. So tell us, because I want to know.
And by the way, I'm a work in progress, everyone. Before you think like, oh wow, Ritu like really has it all figured out and her life is like perfect and whatever, I would tell you like my life feels like it's a fucking mess all the time, and I'm like constantly feeling overwhelmed and. However, I am always anchored to who I am. Like I often will say, here I am anchored. The good swirls around me, the bad, the ugly, everything is swirling around me, and I am anchored. And why? The number one thing that I did to bring more authenticity, belonging, and joy into my life is cultivate what I call my core wisdom.
What the hell is that?
Yeah, right. Good question. So our core wisdom is the inner knowing that pushes us to tune into ourselves and say to ourselves, in any situation, any interaction, any moment we're in, whether it's a moment of joy or a moment of feeling stressed or a moment of deep pain, whatever it is, we tune in and we say to ourselves, what's my mind saying right now? And in a moment of joy, we'll be saying, oh, I feel so good. This feels really good. Or I really like her. Like, for example, right now, I'm really enjoying this. But in a stressful moment, it'll say, oh my God, I'm such a loser. See, I'm always a loser. And I can tell he's judging me. And this is why I shouldn't speak. And no, don't speak. And I knew you didn't like me. So we hear the narratives in the head, in the mind. We hear the voice. Our core wisdom also pushes us to say, what am I feeling in my body? So let's go back to what I was sharing earlier. Belonging is a feeling. A lack of belonging is a feeling. What is the difference between fitting in and actually being who we are? You'll know the difference based on what your body is telling you. So our core wisdom says, in this moment, in this experience, what is my body feeling and sensing? And we start to tune in, we feel the stress in our chest, and we'll feel that we're starting to sweat, and we'll feel the heat on our face. And then coupled with the negative narratives in our head, like you're a loser, you suck, see, don't speak, don't be who you are, they're going to judge you. We hear all of this and feel all of this happening. And in that moment, we leap into using our core wisdom strategies, which include, oh no, negative inner saboteur, I'm not going to let you talk to me that way. And we have our affirmations or our mantras, our self-coaching ready to go, because we're like, no way, Ritu Bhasin, stand in your power. Ritu Bhasin, speak. Or my favorite thing, Ritu Bhasin, you've got this. If you don't speak, who will? So then my affirmations and mantras start going. But then my body is still activated.
Yeah.
So then I start doing my deep breathing work in that moment. And I start this deep breathing. I take my hands, I rub it on my thighs, or I put it on my chest, rub my fingers. I feel the tears coming up and I say, cry, let it out. Oh, you don't want to do it right here because they're watching, you don't feel comfortable? That's okay. Come back to this later. It's called emotional release or emotional discharge. Goes back to the activation. When we feel like we're being judged, what's actually happening in the body is that as human beings, we're animals and we're governed by our nervous systems. All day long, our nervous systems are clocking for harmful things in the environment. Back in the day, although for some people, I think maybe you, Mel, given how your early morning hikes, we're clocking for bears and forests. Okay, most of us are not clocking for bears and forests. What's happening is, oh, see, you didn't say my name right. Or you rolled your eyes when I was speaking, or you raised your eyebrow when you saw what I was wearing, or you keep interrupting me, or I hear the tone in your voice when you're talking to me versus talking to him. Whatever it is, those disrespects, those hurtful things that we're clocking, the body intakes as attacks. It's not the same as being attacked by a bear, but it doesn't matter. The body's like, see, you don't like me. And that's what causes this activation. And when this is happening, energy is generated in the body, which could show up as trembling, shaking, because we're so shocked or we're so upset, could be tears. But the problem is, as humans, we override. And so what happens is the surge of energy comes up, the activation, the tears want to start. We want to start shaking, trembling, let out a moan or a cry. But we say, no, don't do that because you'll be judged. And then we push those sensations down. Our core wisdom says to us, come back to it. So for example, I literally, after I've had a stressful thing happen, or I'm grieving right now because my mother is dying of Alzheimer's, I have all day long, I feel the grief. And I'm like, no, you're at work. Keep going, keep going. But I come back to the moment later in the evening and I'll take my memory back to my mom or whatever has happened during the day that's difficult. And then I'll put on my music, my calming music. I'll feel the tears come up and I let the tears out and I cry and let it out. Why? Because I don't want that energy to be trapped in me. But the other thing I'll mention here as it ties to our core wisdom is that I also do this with joy, because I feel like for a lot of us, we have capacity, or we spend a lot of time with the pain. And what we're not doing enough of is spending time with the joy. And joy isn't just a mind thing. Oh, this is so nice. And I'm really enjoying this. And isn't this experience with my family pretty and nice? It's the actually feeling it in my body. And then the very last thing I'll say about core wisdom is that, first of all, it can be developed. The more we do it, we develop it. It's like a muscle, of course, is that we want to develop our core wisdom so that we build more settled nervous systems, so that we are more settled, so that we're less likely to be activated. And when we are triggered by the horrible shit that happens to us, we're able to address it. And so there, like many experiences, like there is no blue pill or red pill that we can take and like, oh, look at that, instantly I am healed. It's not like that. It's a journey. But the better we get, the better and better we get, the less rattled we are and the happier we are.
Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you like this one, I have a feeling you're going to like this one too. I'll see you there.